I think of the fields as almost being a theater of our youth, because what's going on there is something that as children many of us dreamed to do. And now, of course, when we look at it, we think of our fathers and grandfathers that took us to our first game. When I was young, we would go to St. Louis, where my dad was from. His brothers and my grandfather, we would go to games in Old Sportsman's Park and watch Stan Musial and Bob Gibson. That was where I first came to love baseball, and it was a family event. The boys being together. The feeling that I try to get in the paintings is a naive feeling of purity and innocence in the field, while outside the field there's oftentimes chaos or a hectic bustle, or like real life. I'm thinking about the inside-outside thing, the safety inside the dugout of the players with their arms stretched out and lounging, and then the intensity of the crowd where everybody's all packed in next to each other, looking out on that pristine green field. The Ballpark project is my attempt to paint all 30 Major League Baseball stadiums in the same format, 36 by 60, from high up in the stands with the landscape of the cities in the background, many of the fans in the ballparks, and trying to get a sense of the light and the overall character of the ballpark, which is a symbol and microcosm of the cities themselves. So I've done 9 in 3 years that I've been doing this, which leaves 21 to go. That means another 7 more years if I can keep on this pace, but they take a long time. Because I want them to be rich and dense, and the varied sources that they come from. I walk around, I sketch like crazy, I take a boatload of pictures, and so the paintings have an organic gestation, and I don't know what they're going to look like when I start off. For instance, the Yankee Stadium one has this huge flag in it. That just came to me because I had a big blank space, and suddenly it seemed like, oh, that'll solve that problem. That'll also speak to the whole project of baseball in America. And then as I painted it, it had a gestural quality that reminded me of the Jasper Johns American flag, which of course is an icon of American pop art. The idea of the ballparks in America going together, I think that's a good thing. I began painting baseball paintings in graduate school when I did a small painting based on memory of a guy standing in center field. Of all the paintings that I'd been doing, my teacher, Neil Welliver, responded to that painting and said, I like the psychology of that. It definitely gave me pause because I didn't think of the paintings as having a psychological component. I thought them as being purely visual. It was a solitary player in a shaft of light, and he saw it as being something far greater than that. I did another version of the painting, and it sold. There you go. It was interesting in an intellectual way to my teacher, and then somebody wanted to own it, so that gave the whole thing, for me, a kind of validation, and I could follow my childhood fantasy through a visual exploration of baseball players. Another thing that happened at the University of Pennsylvania is Red Grooms had a large installation project called Philadelphia Cornucopia, and I was doing installation at the ICA, which was across the street from the art department. I worked on that project for a number of months, and he had a tremendous influence. He was working on the Ruckus Manhattan, which was his sculpto-pictorama of the whole island of Manhattan. This notion of putting everything in and finding a way to have it all fit together and feel like one thing was huge to me. A lot of it has to do with scale. Paintings are this size because I can get really tiny detail, and yet there are also large, bold things in it too. You're getting a sense of the up close and the very far away, the whole thing. And that's a Red Grooms trademark because it's the richness and the complexity that really define Grooms, and a kind of cartoony quality too, a fun, joyful, non-ironic quality. You're taking your experience and you're making it your own. A lot of these paintings have a far horizon where the land just peters out and becomes absorbed by the sky. I like to paint up high, for one, because you can see out of the stadium, seeing the furthest away thing, and then you're also seeing the things that are up close. things poking in from the side that are unexpected. The scorecard that's in your lap. The guy sitting next to you raising up the hot dog. The paintings are not all about what is going on in the field, but they're about being in the stands, being in the park itself. There was a period of time in the 60s and 70s where there were virtually no signs. But when you look at the old photographs, there are a lot of signs. The Green Monster in Fenway Park used to be covered with big advertisements for whiskey and razor blades. We kind of like that nostalgic quality of signage on the old parks, and yet we bemoan the signage on the new parks. Well, what are people in 20, 30 years going to think? In 50 years, they're going to look at these ads and go, oh, remember those Nikon cameras? By staying true to what is happening now, it's not nostalgic, but ultimately it will become nostalgic because it'll have to. I don't know when they started to do it, but I love the fact that the Mo strips give a perspective grid of different colors on the ground. The Mo strips establish the field as a pure architectural space. One of the most dramatic things about these ballparks is when the lights start to get low and the sun starts to set, you see the shadows of the light towers reaching out across the pitching mound. The shadows give you a chance to tell the story of what's happening outside the picture. So the paintings are not only about what you see in the painting, but also about what is implied by the painting. In the painting Tight Spot at Yankee Stadium, the scoreboard tells the story. It's the top of the ninth inning, Angels last bat. The Yankees are ahead by 1 run, but the Angels have the bases loaded. The call to the bullpen has been made. Coming up to bat is the best hitter in Major League Baseball, Albert Pujols, so things are really looking pretty dark for the Bronx Bombers. I like having them all huddled on their little oasis of a mound while the Angels are spread out on the bases with their hands on their hips, looking very confident, while the Yankees are sort of cowering in the dugout and in the bullpen. Maybe they'll get out of it, but you just don't know. Neither do I, since I made it up all from scratch. I grew up outside of Boston, but my dad and mom both are from St. Louis. My dad never took me to a Red Sox game and never became a Red Sox fan. I would go to Cardinals games until I was old enough to go to games myself. At that point, I became a Red Sox fan, and now that I've been in Philadelphia for 30 years, I've become a Phillies fan. So I'm kind of unfaithful in that regard. The thing that baseball shares with painting is a sense of anticipation. When you're making a line in painting, you're generally not thinking of that as the finished product. You're imagining what it's going to become. And of course, in baseball, it's all about looking at what's out there now and what are the possibilities going forward. And that's where the drama of it comes, is this anticipation of known and unknown. And when the count is 3-2, the bases are loaded, and there's 2 outs, and that ball is on its way, you're thinking, man, something is going to happen here in half a second. I have no idea what it's going to be. And I think painting shares that same thing when you're sketching out a composition and you have an idea what it's going to be, but you can't really be sure. The quality of time and an intensification of the moment when things suddenly change. When you first put that color on, how the whole painting completely transforms itself.